Alrighty, welcome. This is week 9 of, it's week 9 of Business 130 Macroeconomics. Again, I'm going to tell you what we're going to do this week. We are getting close to the end, okay? And so you really need to pay attention to where you are and what work you still have outstanding and complete that. This week, we are also covering 2 chapters. Next week, we'll also cover 2 chapters. But there will also be the final exam, which was due at the end of week 10. The reason for that is that I need time to grade the final exams. It will be written and not taken on Connect. And so I'll need a few days to do that. So that's why it's due the Sunday before the final week. The final week, week 11, is basically you don't have that much to do. You will have time to complete some outstanding Connect work in case you have it, because everything is due Sunday the 23rd, and after that there will be no more makeup time. So make sure you're up to speed with what you need to be. So today I want to talk about a couple of things. First one was to this week. This week we cover 2 chapters. So if you go to coursework again, you will see here that when you go to week 9, you will talk about stabilizing the economy, the role of the Fed, and aggregate demand, aggregate supply, and inflation. So this is an important. These are 2 important chapters because the Fed, it's basically the organization that controls the money supply, and so this is the organization that controls how much money there is into the economy. And the book explains how they do that, but basically they do that through interest rates and deciding how much the price of money changes. And if the price of money changes, price of money being called interest rate, and is how much you pay if you want to go to get money at the money store, which is the bank, right? You want to start a business, you want to buy a house, you go to the bank and say, hey, I need some money. Can I borrow some money? They'll say yes, but you have to pay us some price, and the price is called interest rate, and is measured in yearly interest rate. So, if you borrow 100 and interest rate is 5% for 1 year, after 1 year, you have to give $105 back. That's a simplified version, but that's what it means. So if I increase that interest rate 6%, now the banks will charge more, and so I will have less incentive to borrow money. So I kind of will not do that process as much. But if you lower interest rate, then it gets more appetizing, more appealing to borrow money for whatever you want to do. Hopefully, to start a business and increase the economy, but that's what it is. And then the next chapter talks about aggregate demand, aggregate supply, which is basically how, one graph, using the supply demand graph, but apply to the entire economy, how you can explain what's happening, right? So you will have the total demand in one graph, you'll have the total supply, and then you can see what expected outcomes or changes will a policy bring. So if you say, well, the government will decide to spend a lot of money like they did during the pandemic, for example, the government spent trillions of dollars and giving people help for rent, and they actually sent some checks to people. So your parents, you might have received some money from the government. And so that can be shown into the aggregate demand because it will be an increase in total demand. Since there's more money to the economy sent to people, the people spend the money. And so that'll change the aggregate demand. And so you will see what expectations you might have for inflation and employment and stuff like that. So it's very, very interesting chapters because they relate to what basically controls our lives every day. Okay, so when you go to week 9, you click here, you do the usual thing, you know what you have to do, you know what you're going to learn, and then if you go here, assignment and projects, you'll know what's due, and it's a bunch of stuff. As usual, you click in and do them, and then here on you have the 2 PowerPoint presentations for the 2 chapters, and then you will have a couple of videos that help you understand these ideas of aggregate demand, aggregate supply, and what they are, and how you can use them to simulate or see what the economy will do depending on certain policies. And remember, those are rough models, so they're not perfect. You will not be able to predict exactly what happens, also because there's many factors, many unexpected changes. So it's a bit complicated, but it gets you a good idea on what the expected outcomes of policies are. So apart from this, I want to spend a couple of minutes talking about the final exam. The final exam, you can already start working on it. And actually, I suggest you start working on it now. This is a required mandated exercise from the university. So the university requires all students at this type of courses to show what they have understood, and the questions that are not created by me, they are created by a committee at the university level, at the college level. Okay, so I just took it and I give it to you as a final exam, because the material you need to understand for that comes some at the beginning, some at the end, and so you need to have that knowledge before you can address it. But I suggest you start looking at it, and I give you, and I'll show you what that is and what you have to do. So when, in this case, when you go to coursework, you need to go to week 10, and on week 10, when you go to assignments and projects, you scroll at the end, you have this thing, the final exam. The final exam is due at the end of week 10. It's due June 16th. Okay, remember it's due June 16th. So you have this week and next week to work on it. Okay, and you simply click on this, download the Word document that I'll show you in a minute, and then you write your answer, you do what you need to do, and then you upload it as an assignment, and I'll grade it as an assignment. So that's how it works. Okay, so when you go into it, you open a document and it will look something like this. So this is the final exam for Business 130 Macroeconomics. And you have to discuss the following prompt, and you have to address each one of the topics. Okay, so this is the prompt from the university, the one that I took for you to address, and it's this one. One issue of ongoing importance in the study of, why this thing keeps coming up, so I'll not use it. One issue of ongoing importance in the study of macroeconomics is the impact of protectionism, not only on an individual country's macroeconomy, but also on the global economy and ethics. Okay, using materials discussed in the course lectures, reading, and your general knowledge of the issue, identify and analyze the major protectionist tactics the United States employ and explain the macroeconomic repercussions of such on trade with other countries. Explain the inefficiencies of the protectionist tactics identified in A above, and evaluate the cultural and or ethical consequences of the same on global macroeconomy. Okay, so this one starts from what we did on chapter, it was week 2. So to start from this, you want to go back to coursework, go back to chapter 2, week 2, which is comparative advantage. You want to start from that one. If you remember, comparative advantage shows, if you go to material and resources already open for you, there is a PowerPoint on comparative advantage. If you remember, it shows how country benefits, because there's all these graphs of, because if you specialize in what you're best at doing, then you will be more efficient and you can produce more than you need of what you're more efficient at producing, and then you can exchange your surplus. Okay, so this is the theory you want to set at the beginning. You want to explain what the theory is, and you want to show that it benefits everybody in theory. And then you want to show what policies are preventing that. That's it, because the main question here is the impact of protectionism, right? And so you want to say, well, there are tariffs, whatever is discussed. And actually now you can go back to the topics that are presented next week. So next week you'll have the chapter exactly that on international trade. So if you go back to now to here, and you go back to coursework, and now you go back to, again, to week 10, you have exactly the chapters on international trade, right? So this is the chapter, where is the titles here? International trade policy and exchange rate in an open economy. So now we open the economy. We know that in theory, specialization is better, it's good, but now you need to understand that, so how this international trade works, what are the trade policies, and so they'll tell you can do several things. If you want to say there is an industry that is losing jobs because foreign competition of cheaper goods compete with them, then you can put a tariff, you can put a quota, you can do different things. And so you want to explain that, and then you want to explain, maybe looking at some data, you can research a couple of articles and you can figure out what policies are and what the consequences are. And you can look at the US perspective, and also you can look at the global perspective, right? So if you say, well, there are many examples, I'll tell you one, and then you have to research kind of and look at a different articles that discuss that. But for example, Europe and the United States, I believe, and some other countries, they have subsidies. Another way that you can interfere with foreign trade is subsidize more inefficient, more expensive industries in your country to make them compete with the cheaper outside world. And so a lot of the policies in Europe and the United States and Canada, many countries, developed countries, are agricultural policies. It's either, usually it can be subsidies. So you make artificially cheaper to produce certain products in your country. You subsidize that to make it cheaper. Everybody pays for that. But the consequence is that now you might take away production and jobs from farmers in other parts of the world that before were able to compete with you and maybe producing, and now they're not able to do this anymore. So you want to take a couple of examples and explain that. And again, now I'll show you what it looks like here, but this is what you have to do. You want to address each one of the topics. Okay, so first you want to, as I said, you want to start with referring chapter 2 and say, well, the theory of comparative advantage, say blah, blah, blah. And then you want to say that this is what countries can do. They can put tariffs, they can subsidize. And you can give some examples, and you can look for a couple of articles and you can give some examples, and then you can explain why it's inefficient. You can use examples from articles. I told you one example. If you subsidize one in your country, then you can can create problems for producers that will produce cheaper in other countries, especially in developing poorer countries. That's one of the complaints that you get a lot. Or if you put a tariff, you might end up hurting consumers because now the imported goods, or they were cheaper, now they're not imported anymore, they're produced more expensively in the country, domestically, and stuff like that. And then you can use graphs, charts, whatever you want to use, but you have to cite your sources wherever you take them from. So if you don't make the graph and you're taking them from a publication, just put the graph in and cite where it comes from, right? It's not a big deal. It happens all the time. You don't need to be at this level, create all your own graphs. You can use somebody else's graph as long as they're pertinent. Make it no longer than 2 pages, double space. So don't write a ton. I want you to go to the point, show that you understand what the protectionist, why free trade in theory is good, what the protectionist tactics can be, and what the effects are. Okay, and you have to use at least sources. It could be academic, it could be whatever, articles, 3 sources. You can cite the book, and then use citation, do formal citation. You can use whatever citation format you like. I'm not picky, just use the same one. Okay, and you can use it, submit it either Word or PDF, and attach the images to the document. But don't make it too long. Explain what you need to explain, and you'll be fine. Just, it's an interesting topic. It's, it's every day. Comes all the time. Especially you have business people. You will work probably in businesses that deal with foreign trade, and so it's important for you to know how government policies in different countries will affect your business, the business you're working for. Okay, so that's the material this week. I will post this video with a reminder to watch it, and a reminder about the exam, and I will see you next week. Thank you very much.